You wake up when your body is ready. No alarm. No schedule. No notifications pulling you out of sleep before your brain has finished what it was doing. The sun is still low. The air is cool. You lie there for a moment, aware of the sounds around you. The fire, the breathing of others, the birds outside. Then you get up, and you figure out what the day needs. For roughly 300,000 years, this was the default human morning. Not a fantasy, not a privilege, just the ordinary texture of being alive before the modern world decided your time belonged to someone else. And if you want to understand what your ancestors actually did with their days, not the dramatic parts, not the cave paintings or the mammoth hunts, but the actual hour-by-hour rhythm of a prehistoric life, you might be surprised by how much of it looks like nothing you expected. The first thing to understand is that your ancestors were not busy in the way you are. Anthropologist Marshall Sahlins studied hunter-gatherer societies and published a landmark analysis in 1972 in which he described them as the original affluent societies, not because they had a lot of things, but because their wants were few and their means were sufficient. The Kungsan people of the Kalahari, studied extensively by anthropologist Richard Lee in the 1960s, worked an average of around 3 to 5 hours per day to meet their subsistence needs. The rest of the time was not empty. It was not wasted. It was just not what we would call productive. Think about what that means. 3 to 5 hours to feed yourself, your family, your group. Then the day stretches open. So what did they actually do with it? They talked. This sounds obvious until you realize how much of it there was and what it was for. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar, who developed what is now called the social brain hypothesis, found that language itself likely evolved partly as a form of social grooming, a way to maintain bonds across larger groups than physical grooming alone could handle. When your ancestors sat together after a meal, they were not wasting time. They were doing something essential. They were maintaining the web of relationships that kept everyone alive. Who was reliable? Who was generous? Who had taken more than their share? These conversations were the social infrastructure of survival. And underneath the talking, they were doing other things with their hands. Tool maintenance was constant. A hand axe, a scraper, a hafted spearhead. These things dulled, cracked, came loose. Keeping them sharp and functional was not a chore you scheduled. It was something you did while talking, while resting, while the fire was burning low. Archaeologist Nicholas Toth, who has spent decades studying early stone tool technologies at sites like Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, has described the production of even basic flaked stone tools as requiring significant skill and deliberate practice, the kind of practiced repetition that filled idle hands across thousands of generations. Your ancestors also moved. Not in the structured, goal-oriented way that exercise means today, but consistently, over long distances, across varied terrain. Studies of the Hadza people of Tanzania, one of the last fully hunter-gatherer societies studied in modern times, show that Hadza adults walk an average of around 7 to 12 kilometers per day, just as part of their normal daily activity. Not for fitness, not to hit a step count. Just because that is what a day of living required. Foraging took them out. Following animal signs took them further. Returning with food or materials brought them back. Movement was woven through everything, not separated from it. So let us reconstruct a day. The sun rises. Your group has sheltered through the night, possibly in a rock overhang, possibly in a temporary structure of branches and leaves, possibly under a broad tree in a region warm enough to allow it. Sleeping arrangements were communal, the evidence from sites like Sibudu Cave in South Africa, where researchers discovered ancient bedding layers dating back over 70,000 years, made from compacted plant material, suggests that sleep was a shared, somewhat organized affair. You eat something small if there is something left from the previous day. Then you begin to move. If you are following a plant-focused foraging strategy, common in many regions, you head toward areas you already know. Your mental map of the landscape is extraordinary. Researchers studying modern forager groups have found that individuals carry detailed knowledge of hundreds of plant species, which are edible, which are medicinal, which are toxic, and where they are most likely to be found across different seasons. This is not intuition. It is accumulated expertise, built over years of learning from older members of the group, tested and refined by experience. You pick, you dig, you observe, you find tubers, the underground storage organs of plants that provided dense, reliable calories across much of human prehistory. Richard Wrangham, a primatologist at Harvard University, has argued in his cooking hypothesis that the shift to cooking starchy underground foods like tubers was one of the most important transitions in human evolution, unlocking more calories from food, reducing digestive costs, and potentially driving the expansion of the human brain itself. Tubers were not glamorous, but they were dependable. And dependable meant alive. You carry what you find. You come back. If there is a hunt underway, the dynamic shifts. Hunting in the Paleolithic was not the solitary heroic pursuit that popular imagination tends to picture. It was collaborative, strategic, and often patient to a degree that is hard to fathom. Studies of persistence hunting, a strategy documented among the Kalahari San and other groups, show that human hunters could pursue large prey over distances of many kilometers, using their ability to run and walk at a sustained pace and to track animal movement until the animal overheated and collapsed. Your ancestors could not outrun an impala in a sprint, but they could outlast 1 over 5 hours on a hot afternoon. This required communication, planning, a shared understanding of terrain and animal behavior built up over many hunts. When the hunt was successful, it was a significant event. Not just because of the food, though the calories and nutrients from animal protein and fat were critical, but because of what it meant socially. Meat sharing was governed by rules. Documented hunter-gatherer societies show elaborate systems for distributing the results of a hunt, with specific portions going to specific relatives, to the hunter, to those who had contributed tools or assistance. Generosity was tracked. Stinginess was remembered. The meal was also a moral ledger. Then the afternoon stretched out. Children played. And this was not trivial. Peter Gray, a developmental psychologist who has written extensively on the nature of play in hunter-gatherer children, found that children in these societies spent most of their waking hours in mixed-age, self-directed play. Not supervised activities, not structured learning, but free exploration alongside older children who modeled skills and younger children who watched and imitated. This is how knowledge passed down. Not through lectures, through doing, watching, and playing. Adults rested, genuinely rested. Not the half-rest of someone lying on a couch scrolling through content, one eye on a screen. Not the guilty rest of someone who knows there is more to be done. Real rest, woven into the day without apology, because the body and the group both recognized it as part of what kept everyone functional. And here is the twist that makes this more than nostalgia. Agriculture changed everything, and not entirely for the better. When your ancestors began farming around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, first in the Fertile Crescent and then independently in several other regions, they did not simply improve on what came before. They traded one kind of life for another. Early agricultural skeletons, analyzed at sites across the ancient Near East and Mesoamerica, show shorter stature, more dental cavities, more signs of nutritional stress, and more repetitive strain injuries than the hunter-gatherers who preceded them. The harvest required more hours. The diet narrowed. The gap between those who owned land and those who did not began to open. What looked like progress from the outside was, for many of the people living through it, a harder life. You work more now than your ancestors did. You sit more. You sleep less. And you sleep alone. You eat food your body was not shaped to process at the pace and volume that modern supply chains make possible. You spend the majority of your waking hours doing tasks assigned by others. In exchange for tokens you trade for the things you actually need. None of this means you should want to return to the Pleistocene. The past was dangerous in ways that are easy to romanticize from a distance. But understanding what a day actually looked like for the vast majority of human history does something important. It tells you what your body was built for. Movement woven through the hours, not compressed into 30 minutes. Sleep that ends when you are finished sleeping. Food earned slowly. Conversation as work. Rest without guilt. Hands busy with something real. You wake up when your body is ready. For 300,000 years, that was not a dream. It was Tuesday.